Okay guys, here's what we're doing today. We got this Thermaltake View 31 case with all my fans. Got a ton of them in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a case swap to this lian lancool 2. Taking all the parts out of that case and putting in this case. And then these parts are going to go in the Thermaltake case. We got a Ryzen 2700, a Gigabyte B450 motherboard. I know the RAM works in it. My son had that RAM in his motherboard. 2 terabyte storage drive for games, 256 gig SSD, Wi-Fi adapter. Got to have a screwdriver. And then we got a 750 watt gold EVGA modular power supply. And for now, we've got a 3 gig GTX 1060. Eventually, we're going to upgrade my girlfriend's computer to a probably a 2060, so she can do some ray tracing and play her Minecraft and Battlefield and some other good ray tracing games, let alone other games that doesn't even support ray tracing. But that's the project, kind of the room setup there too. All my custom built shelving. Looks like crap, but hey. Gotta do what you gotta do to get a computer in your room. But yeah, let's unplug the Thermaltake and start disassembling the computer and getting parts swapped out and ready to go. We'll see you here in a minute. Alright, here we go. We'll start removing some parts here. I sprayed a little duster on it and I have to say she's pretty dirty. I've got the video card unplugged from the motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and probably just take out the vertical bracket, the GPU mount. Sure she don't start falling on me here. Try to stay out of the way so the camera can see. Got a lot of unbolting, nuts and bolts, and a slew of wires on the back, so we'll get to it. It'll be a time-consuming video, that's for sure. Go. There's the GPU. Got the bracket on the back. A little dusty. I'm going to set her down. Alright, we got that out. Put my screws over here a little bit. Alright. Got plenty of nuts and bolts and screws and all kinds of stuff to tear into here. Don't know if I'm better off to pause the video and tear into it again after I get some more stuff removed. Might just do that. Because I've got to remove fans and just so I get the motherboard out, and a little bit of everything to do here. It's going to be a time-consuming build, but yeah, it'll be worth it. Well, I'm about getting into my CPU cooler here, or getting past the CPU cooler. A little tight in here. I got a small screwdriver or not? by hand. Yeah, I kind of doubled up some fans here. Looked really cool. Don't know how much it helped with airflow, but it's a Dark Flash Talon Pro RGB fan mounted on top of a Cooler Master 120 fan. Okay. Tell you what, I got a lot to do here. Let's just pause the video and come back when I get this thing disassembled. Okay, here's what we got going on so far. I took a while to strip the other computer. Pretty well got the motherboard and video card, hard drives, power supply out. Just left a few fans. These little panels go inside the back side of this case. What I've got going on so far, we've got the motherboard in there, which I'm going to switch the cooler and put a radiator in the front. We've got the power supply down at the bottom. So far I've got audio 3.0 front panel and the power buttons all wired up. We've got the 24-pin motherboard plug, and then we got the power plug up in there. And other than that, I may have to play around with the configuration of the fans. I might have to take something out because I'm going to put 140 millimeter, I'm going to put a 120 radiator in and nuts and bolts on the outsides to bolt in 140 millimeter Cooler Master fans. So I may have to arrange these, just move them just a hair to get to the nuts and bolts. No big deal there. Back panel is kind of a little bit of a wiring mess, and not too bad because I got those panels over there to cover all this once I get it all wired up. But at least give you an idea how the build's kind of going. It's taking a minute, so I figured just do little bits and pieces, like a progress kind of video. But that's what we got going on so far. I'm going to keep wiring up some more stuff, get that radiator ready. I've got a cap that I made for the radiator too, so it's a little different. So we'll see how things go with this build. Alright, we've got 3 Dark Flash Talon Pro RGB fans in the front. They're sitting a little sideways. I just wanted to get the power cords off to the side. And then we've got the Cooler Master radiator. I'm going to switch the cap out and put the Ryzen cap on it. I've got 2 of the lian fans on the inside. 2 Cooler Master fans, 120s on top of the power supply shroud. A 120 in the back. I'm switching the AMD cooler out for the radiator here shortly. And then I've got 2 140 millimeter Cooler Master in the top. And other than that, got to wire up the graphics card, put the graphics card in the slot there. I want to get the radiator on first, and then get my graphics card in. Other than that, a couple power wires to the hard drives. Kind of a rat's nest here, but as soon as I put the panels on the back side, it's going to help kind of cover all the wires and stuff. Just kind of work in progress, figuring out what I got to do. I know I got to use like a little splitter board I got for the power for fans, and then I'll probably run a Dark Flash controller and a Cooler Master controller. So got to make room for them. But yeah, a few power wires and we're in there. It's a little bit more. Alright, here's what we got as far as the finished product. I had to swap fans around and move some stuff. My radiator I swapped out, put the AMD cooler back on it. One of the ports on my controller was evidently acting funny or burnt up or something. But I knew RGB, I'm not going to see much of the front fans. But I put 3 of the Dark Flash Talon Pros in there and 1 in the rear. Looks good that way, but I like the RGB front panel. And pretty much I had to drop the graphics card down. There's the front all lit up. But what I run into was the cooler would not fit in there where I had the graphics card up just a little higher. I had these two fans mounted on the top. Well, what I did was ended up, it's got screws, and I mounted the screws upward. So just glass. But there's a little bit of a screw head barely sticking up across the bottom here. Even put them in the back. I pulled the power supply out and ran all 4 screws in each fan. And it really blows the airflow up against the graphics card. And then I've got 2 fans exhausting air out the top. The dark flash fan in the back exhausting out. Temperatures seem alright. It's, I'd say, about the same as what I had with the Thermaltake case. But I've got the 3 dark flash fans in the front, and then I've got 3 of the lian fans that came with the case. I've got them sucking air in too. And kind of put your hand in the front, and there's some good cold air that does come in. So it is blowing, sucking across the video card, and then blowing up and out. So, you know, it turned out being pretty good. Eventually I'll try to put that radiator back on and swap out the controller. It was something a little more, you know, a little more like one of these type of Cooler Master controllers. And I think one of the ports was bad on it or something. I've got a couple of them. And, yeah, I had a fan that was oddball collared and just not acting right, where I kind of had 5 of them in there, and then plus the radiator. So I just took the radiator out and kind of noticed the fan wasn't acting too great on that same channel. So I did away with running a fan off of that control box and just added the dark flash fan in the back. But yeah, everything turned out pretty good with the build. Didn't really have too many problems. I was messing with the fans and wires. At one point in time, my graphics card wasn't quite lighting up, and go to MSI Afterburner and turn the fans on, and that makes the card kind of stay lit up when you up the fans, and it just wouldn't stay on. It kept saying fan stop, and I kind of rewired some fans and didn't mess with the power cord that goes, you know, I left it plugged in, the 6-pin and 8-pin plugged in the same spot on the power supply, and just rewiring something, messing with the wires, and it acted fine after I had switched out the cooler and everything. So I'm fairly happy with how the build turned out. I'm sorry the video is so pieced together, but I didn't show too much work. I had to take all these parts out of my Thermaltake case and put them in the lian case, and just time consuming, taking parts out, figuring out fan wiring, just because of the RGB, and yeah, just wasn't 3 or 4 pin power. You had to figure out the RGB and run them into a controller, and the backside doesn't look too bad as far as messy. A lot of, you know, it does have, I use like twist ties, black twist ties instead of zip ties. Still hides the wires, and then it's got those like 3 panels in the backside that hide your wires, and I mounted a 10-port fan hub underneath a really small panel there, and I may rewire them and get more of these Cooler Master fans hooked up to the motherboard, so I might be able to control the fan speed. Right now, I mean, really about the only thing fan speed wise I can control is the cooler, but pretty well the rest of them set on factory. The dark flash does have a speed button on the controller, and I'm pretty sure I've got all 4 of those running on the high speed or fastest speed. But yeah, you get the lancool case, lancool 2 case. Keep in mind too that you can run 2 fans on the inside of the power supply shroud and just reverse the screws. You have to have a really small Phillips screwdriver. I used a socket wrench. With a little driver on the end, and a Phillips bit fit right into it. And from there, I just kind of done little quarter turns till I got the fans in tight. But it worked out pretty good. There's let's see, a ASUS Prime X470 Pro motherboard. We've got a 500 gig M.2 Crucial hard drive up behind the graphics card there. It's mounted to the motherboard. The AMD cooler, 16 gig, or yeah, two 16 gig sticks of G-Skill Trident Z RGB RAM. They're clocked at 3200 megahertz. Got the Gigabyte Aorus RTX 2060 Super. My card does run fairly hot. That's the only component in this computer that has made me worry or stressed me out over the video card being a little hotter than most graphics cards I've ever owned. It still performs good. It's just all the heat, all the hot temperatures come from that card. If it was a totally different card, my computer would feel like it was 10 to 15 degrees cooler, I would not doubt. But eventually I want to get some kind of RGB fans and run 3 of them on the inside, maybe change all these out, get enough to where all the fans match in the case. Whether it's Iago or Dark Flash or something. I mean, I can't really afford to go out and buy a bunch of Corsair or expensive fans, just get something that's RGB, about like those ring fans in my white computer, but I kind of want both sides to glow. That way I can reverse fans and keep airflow direction going into the computer. The Dark Flash, the only thing with them, the way you set those up, they, the 3 in the front, they suck air in. If I would have put fans on the inside of those same ones, they'd be sucking air that way. So they'd be sucking air against each other. So I had to run them, 3 on the outside, and then put the 3 lian fans in to where they would suck air into the computer. But coming up next, so far I've got my girlfriend's Gigabyte B450 motherboard and her 2700 Ryzen 7 processor mounted, and 16 gigs of 3200 G-Skill RAM. It doesn't glow, and I'm thinking this cooler does have a little ring that kind of glows around it too. But pretty much Wi-Fi adapter. She's going to need that. 2 terabyte drive for games. Got a 256 SSD for Windows 10. For now, we've got an EVGA 1060 3 gig video card, just so she can play some GTA 5 or something. Probably next month get her at least a 2060. That way she can do ray tracing, and she loves her Minecraft, and she likes to play shooters, Battlefield and Metro. I'm sure she'd like to play those too. But got her 750 EVGA, 750 watt EVGA gold modular power supply. And then we've got some leftover Cooler Master fans. I've got 3 of the, you can't see them very well, but there's 3 Dark Flash fans here in the front. Let me set this stuff down real quick. But, yeah, there's 3 of the Dark Flash fans in the front, which I'm going to be moving stuff around and rewiring. There's still a 140mm Cooler Master in the top. There's a Dark Flash 120 and then a Dark Flash 120. I don't know about putting anything on that wall because it's just suck air in, suck air out. I may go with trying to put 3 more fans on the inside to help suck air in, but I may move that down to the basement here and get some kind of RGB fans or something to mount on this side, and might be able to switch stuff out. But I've still got a couple 140s, so I can do a little bit of swapping out between Cooler Master and the Dark Flash. May not have to do too much, at least this month, on any other RGB fans. That's just something in the future, buy a bunch of fans from my computer and her computer and kind of rewire all the fans. But yeah, pretty much I'm waiting on her to get over here, and either she's going to do some recording while I yap and put parts in, or you might see her hands in the video. I'm wanting her to do a little bit of the work there too, and teach her as we go. But I went ahead and put the motherboard and the RAM and processor. I went ahead and mounted all that, and didn't mean to jump too far ahead of her, but there's still a few parts she can put in and learn a little bit on how to do it. But yeah, that'll be my next video. It'll be the Thermaltake with a 2700 and 16 gigs of RAM, 3 gig video card for now. 750 power supply, and a couple drives there. So yeah, it'll be a pretty good computer for her, and ought to keep her rocking for a good while once we get to like a 2060 or something. But yeah, that's the there's my 1700X build, 2060 in it. Ice Tech fans, not too bad of a brand. Got two Thermaltake 140s in the top, and I've got another Thermaltake 140 sitting there. Might eventually rewire everything, but yes, the lian lancool 2 case is a kick-ass case to build in. Got all the panels in the backside where you can hide your wiring. Looks pretty. I wish I could put this tower in at a different angle, but kind of limited on my wall space and stuff here. But yeah, it's a real pretty build, and I think buying the neon strip kind of did it too. The graphics card, the bracket you can buy for that's like 50 to 55 bucks, and honestly I think it's worth it just to be able to mount your video card vertical. But it has a little spacer in the top. Before, when I had the radiator in, the card set up a little higher, and I was able to put these two fans on top of the power supply shroud. Well, after radiator problems and this and that, I decided to switch out and put this AMD cooler back on. And it being wider, my video card, those two wouldn't have fit together. So pretty much I was able to add a bracket that made this whole thing set down just a little bit to where I could get the CPU cooler in. And that's when I started brainstorming and thinking, well, hey, if there's enough room inside the power supply shroud, I'll just try to mount the fans inside and blowing upward. And by golly, there was enough room. I mean, I've got a 1250 watt G-Skill Platinum power supply, and there's maybe half inch in there, not even a half inch between the fans and the power supply. So yeah, pretty much there's not a whole heck of a lot of room to work with. If you do that idea, take the power supply out. That'll make a hell of a lot more room for your screws when you run them up into the case, and they barely stick through. It's nothing major. I mean, you don't want to go grinding and rubbing parts across it, but I got the vertical mount, and it sets up a little high, a little bit off of that bottom shroud, so you ain't really got to worry about a screw going into my video card or nothing like that. Nothing crazy like that. But yeah, eventually I'm going to swap fans out and kind of go from there. But this is pretty well what we got. Turned out looking pretty. Well, guys, thanks for checking out the video, and coming soon we'll be doing this 2700 build. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks, and subscribe, and see you next video.